Welcome to Deep Science Sleep. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey through the botanical kingdom, exploring the most soothing facts about plants. As you settle into your comfortable position, allow yourself to relax completely. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Simply listen as we wander through forests ancient and new, discovering the slow, patient, magnificent world of plant life. The facts we'll explore tonight aren't just interesting. They're deeply calming, reminding us of nature's gentle rhythms and the quiet persistence that has shaped our world for hundreds of millions of years. Let the softness of these stories wash over you, and if your mind begins to drift into sleep, let it go. That's exactly where we want to be. The ancient origins, a story written over millions of years. Let's begin at the very beginning, moving backwards through time to when plants first arrived on our planet. This is a story of patience beyond human comprehension, a narrative that unfolds over timescales so vast they become almost dreamlike in their enormity. Around 470 million years ago, something extraordinary happened. The first plants began their tentative colonization of land. Before this moment, Earth's continents were bare rock and barren soil, a lifeless landscape that would be unrecognizable to us today. The oceans teemed with life, photosynthetic organisms churned in the waves, but the land remained empty, waiting. These pioneer plants were nothing like the towering trees we know today. They were small, humble organisms, ancestors of today's mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. They had no roots to speak of, no flowers, no complex structures. They were simple, low-growing carpets of green that hugged the rocks and slowly, generation by generation, learned to survive in this harsh new environment. Imagine the patience required for this transformation. Each generation made tiny adjustments, imperceptible changes that accumulated over millions of years. These early plants developed the ability to prevent water loss in the dry air. They created primitive structures that could absorb nutrients from rock surfaces. They evolved spores with protective coatings that could withstand the intense ultraviolet radiation that bathed the unprotected land. The colonization happened so slowly it would have been invisible to any observer. Century after century, millennium after millennium, these humble plants spread across the continents. By 445 million years ago, these cryptogamic vegetation carpets covered perhaps 30% of the land surface, a green film spreading across the rocky face of a planet that had never known such color. And here's something truly calming to consider. These early plants accomplished something that would transform Earth forever, yet they did it without any conscious effort, without any plan or purpose. They simply grew, reproduced, and died over and over again for millions of years. Their patient persistence changed everything. The transformation they wrought was chemical, atmospheric, fundamental. Plants take in carbon dioxide and water, using the energy of sunlight to build their bodies, and they release oxygen as a byproduct. This process, photosynthesis, had been happening in the oceans for billions of years, carried out by cyanobacteria and algae. But when photosynthesis moved onto land, when it began happening across vast continental surfaces, the scale changed dramatically. These early land plants had something special about them. Their bodies contained high amounts of carbon but very little phosphorus, creating what scientists call a high carbon-to-phosphorus ratio. Marine organisms had ratios around 100 to 1. These land plants had ratios of 1,000 to 1 or even 2,000 to 1. This meant that for the same amount of phosphorus weathered from rocks and washed into the environment, land plants could bury far more carbon in sediments. Carbon burial is the key to oxygen production on geological timescales. When organic material gets buried before it can decay and release its carbon back into the atmosphere, that carbon stays locked away. And because that carbon came from carbon dioxide that was split apart during photosynthesis, the oxygen that was released with it remains in the atmosphere. Generation by generation, spanning millions of years, these humble plants were gradually enriching Earth's atmosphere with oxygen. Before their arrival, oxygen levels had been around 14%. By 420 to 400 million years ago, oxygen reached modern levels of 21%. The transformation took 70 million years of patient, persistent plant growth. Think about that timescale for a moment. 70 million years. The entirety of human history, from the first stone tools to smartphones and space stations, spans just 3 million years. These plants took more than 20 times that long to oxygenate the atmosphere. There was no hurry, no deadline, just the endless, gentle rhythm of growth and reproduction, photosynthesis and carbon burial, slowly accumulating changes that would make complex animal life possible. The transformation these early plants accomplished created the world we know. The oxygen they produced made it possible for large, active animals to evolve. Before high oxygen levels, animals were necessarily small and simple. Oxygen diffuses slowly through tissue, so without an atmosphere rich in oxygen, animals couldn't grow large or develop high metabolisms. These humble mosses and their relatives created the atmospheric conditions that would eventually allow for insects, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, and eventually, us. And they're still here. When you see moss growing on a tree trunk or a stone wall, you're looking at representatives of one of life's most successful experiments. These organisms have been around for nearly 500 million years, largely unchanged in their basic design, still growing in their patient, unhurried way. The earliest vascular plants appeared in the Silurian period, around 445 to 420 million years ago. These were the first plants with specialized tissues for transporting water and nutrients, what we call xylem and phloem. The innovation of vascular tissue allowed plants to grow taller, to reach upward toward the light, to colonize new environments. One of the earliest known vascular plants was Cooksonia, discovered in fossil deposits from around 425 million years ago. Cooksonia was tiny by our standards, growing perhaps a few centimeters tall. It had simple branching stems topped with spore-bearing capsules called sporangia. No leaves, no roots in the modern sense, just simple upright stems that stood slightly taller than their moss-like neighbors. But that small height advantage was revolutionary. By growing taller, Cooksonia could spread its spores more effectively, catch more sunlight, and gradually outcompete its shorter neighbors. This sparked what scientists have called the Devonian explosion, a rapid diversification of plant forms that occurred between 420 and 360 million years ago. During the Devonian, plants evolved leaves, complex root systems, seeds, and eventually wood. Forests appeared for the first time. The transformation from moss-covered rocks to towering forests took only 60 million years, which in geological terms is remarkably fast, though still incomprehensibly slow by human standards. The evolution of wood was particularly significant. Wood is made primarily of lignin, a complex organic polymer that's difficult for organisms to break down. When plants first evolved lignin, there were no fungi or bacteria that could digest it effectively. This meant that when trees died, their woody trunks didn't rot away. Instead, they piled up, layer upon layer, eventually forming the vast coal deposits we mine today. Those coal beds are physical evidence of ancient forests, compressed and transformed by heat and pressure over hundreds of millions of years. When we burn coal, we're releasing carbon that was captured from the atmosphere by photosynthesis in plants that lived before dinosaurs, before flowering plants, in forests that would seem alien to us today. The atmospheric changes continued. Oxygen levels fluctuated throughout the Paleozoic era, sometimes rising as high as 35% during the Carboniferous period around 300 million years ago. These high oxygen levels allowed for gigantic insects, dragonflies with wingspans of 70 centimeters, millipedes 2 meters long. The world was rich with oxygen, created by the patient photosynthesis of countless plants over countless millions of years. Eventually, organisms evolved that could break down lignin, and the massive accumulation of dead wood slowed. The carbon cycle found a new equilibrium, but by then the transformation was complete. Earth had become a green planet, carpeted with vegetation, its atmosphere forever changed by the slow, persistent work of photosynthesis. As you lie here listening, consider this. Every breath you take contains oxygen produced by plants. Some of it from forests and fields around the world today, some of it created by phytoplankton in the oceans, all of it the result of this ancient process that began hundreds of millions of years ago. The oxygen molecules entering your lungs right now are the gift of photosynthesis, the product of countless plants simply doing what they do, growing toward the light, splitting water molecules, releasing oxygen day after day, year after year, millennium after millennium. There's something profoundly calming about this perspective. We live our brief human lives in a world created by processes that operate on timescales that dwarf our existence. The patience of plants, their ability to transform a planet through nothing but persistent growth over geological time, reminds us that the most profound changes often happen slowly, incrementally, without fanfare or force. The secret underground network, how plants communicate. Now let's explore something remarkable that happens beneath our feet, in the darkness of the soil, where plants engage in a form of communication so sophisticated it's been called the Wood Wide Web. This is a story of connection, cooperation, and chemical conversation that transforms our understanding of what it means to be a plant. In forests around the world, beneath the leaf litter and the rich organic soil, there exists a vast network of fungal threads called hyphae. These microscopic filaments are incredibly thin, often just a few micrometers in diameter, yet they extend for extraordinary distances. In a single gram of forest soil, there can be several meters of fungal hyphae, woven through the spaces between soil particles, wrapping around roots, connecting everything together in an intricate web. These are mycorrhizal fungi, and they form partnerships with plant roots that are ancient, intimate, and mutually beneficial. The relationship is so old it may have helped plants make the transition to land in the first place. Fossil evidence suggests mycorrhizal associations existed in those earliest land plants 470 million years ago. The arrangement is elegant in its simplicity. The fungus wraps its hyphae around or actually penetrates into the root cells of the plant, creating what scientists call a mycorrhiza, literally fungus root in Greek. The fungus acts as an extension of the plant's root system, dramatically increasing the surface area available for absorbing water and nutrients. Those thread-like hyphae can penetrate tiny soil pores that roots can't access, can reach farther into the soil, can extract nutrients more efficiently. In return for this service, the plant provides the fungus with sugars, the products of photosynthesis. The fungus can't photosynthesize, so it depends on the plant for this carbon-rich food. It's a fair trade that benefits both partners. The plant gets better access to nutrients like phosphorus, nitrogen, and various micronutrients. The fungus gets the sugars it needs to grow and reproduce. Both organisms thrive better together than they would alone. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. A single fungal network doesn't connect to just one plant. These mycorrhizal fungi are promiscuous in their partnerships, extending their hyphae to multiple plants simultaneously. A single fungal organism might connect with dozens or even hundreds of trees, creating what scientists call a common mycorrhizal network. Through this network, plants can exchange resources. A tree that's in sunlight and actively photosynthesizing can send sugars through the fungal network to a younger tree growing in shade. A healthy, mature tree can support seedlings of its own species, or even seedlings of different species, helping them survive their vulnerable early years. The discovery of these networks and their functions was pioneered by Suzanne Simard, a forest ecologist at the University of British Columbia. Simard grew up in Canadian forests where her family had worked as foresters for generations. She noticed patterns in the forest that suggested trees weren't just isolated individuals competing for resources. They seemed to be doing something more complex, something cooperative. Her research, starting in the 1990s, revealed that trees were indeed connected through these mycorrhizal networks, and that resources were flowing between them. Using isotopes as tracers, she could track carbon molecules moving from one tree to another through the fungal connections. She found that established trees, what she called mother trees, actively supported younger trees, sending them carbon through the network. Even more remarkably, mother trees showed favoritism to their own offspring, sending more carbon to seedlings that were genetically related to them. Trees can somehow recognize their relatives through the mycorrhizal network, distinguishing between their own offspring and unrelated seedlings of the same species. The mechanism for this recognition is still being studied, but it appears to involve chemical signals exchanged through the fungal network. The network doesn't just move resources, it also transmits information. When a plant is attacked by insects, it often responds by producing defensive chemicals that make its leaves less palatable or even toxic to herbivores. But here's the remarkable part. Neighboring plants connected by the mycorrhizal network also increase their production of defensive chemicals. Even though they haven't been attacked yet, the warning appears to travel through the fungal network. The attacked plant releases chemical signals, possibly electrical impulses as well, that travel through the fungal hyphae to connected plants. Those neighbor plants respond by preparing their own defenses, essentially getting ready for an attack that might be coming their way. In one study, pine trees that received warning signals through the mycorrhizal network activated their defenses faster and more effectively than isolated trees that weren't connected to the network. Being plugged into the wood wide web provided a real survival advantage, allowing plants to anticipate threats rather than just reacting to them. The chemical vocabulary of this underground communication is complex and still being decoded. Plants and fungi exchange dozens if not hundreds of different compounds, each potentially carrying different information. Some signals might communicate stress, others abundance, others the presence of specific threats or opportunities. The mycorrhizal network also serves as a pathway for transferring nutrients when they're needed most. During drought, trees that have access to deeper water through their roots can share that water through the fungal network with trees whose roots haven't reached the water table. During a particularly sunny season, trees in optimal positions can share excess sugars with neighbors whose leaves are shaded. This sharing isn't necessarily altruistic from the tree's perspective, nor is it a conscious decision. The trees are simply following their genetic programming, responding to chemical signals and environmental conditions in ways that happen to create these cooperative patterns. But the result is a forest that functions more like a superorganism than a collection of independent individuals. The fungi, for their part, aren't simply passive conduits for plant communication. They're active players with their own interests. A fungus benefits from having multiple plant partners because different plants provide resources at different times. If one tree is struggling, perhaps due to disease or storm damage, the fungus can shift more of its hyphae toward healthier partners that can provide more sugars. From the fungus's perspective, the goal is to keep all its plant partners alive and productive. A diverse portfolio of plant species provides stability. If one species suffers from a particular pest or pathogen, others might thrive. So the fungus has an evolutionary incentive to move resources from trees that have plenty to trees that are struggling, maintaining the health of the entire network. In some studies, researchers have found that mycorrhizal networks can span enormous areas. The mycelium of some fungal species can cover several square kilometers, connecting thousands of trees into a single vast network. One specimen of the fungus Armillaria ostoi in Oregon has been estimated to cover 9 square kilometers and be more than 2,000 years old, making it possibly the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. Imagine walking through a forest and knowing that beneath your feet, threading through the soil, invisible to the eye, is this enormous living network connecting every tree and plant you can see. With each step, you're walking over kilometers of fungal hyphae, pathways of chemical communication, conduits of nutrients and water, a dark web of life that predates the internet by hundreds of millions of years yet serves remarkably similar functions. Connection, communication, sharing of resources and information. The existence of these networks changes how we think about forests. A forest isn't just a collection of trees that happen to grow near each other. It's a community, an interconnected system where individuals support each other, where established trees nurture young saplings, where warnings spread through the network like ripples on water, where resources flow from abundance to scarcity, balancing the system. There's debate in the scientific community about the extent and importance of these networks, with some researchers urging caution about anthropomorphizing plant behavior or overstating the cooperative nature of these systems. Trees are also competitors, after all, vying for light and water and space. The same root systems that connect to mycorrhizal networks also compete with neighboring roots for resources. But even skeptics acknowledge that mycorrhizal networks exist and that resources and signals move through them. The debate is about how much this matters, how much it shapes forest ecology, how much it represents cooperation versus simple physics and chemistry. These are good scientific debates, questions that researchers are actively working to answer through careful experiments and observations. Regardless of the final resolution of these debates, one thing is clear. The underground world of forests is far more complex, dynamic, and interconnected than we imagined just a few decades ago. The roots and fungi beneath our feet are engaged in constant chemical conversation, exchanging nutrients and information in ways we're still learning to understand. And here's something particularly calming to consider. This system has been functioning for hundreds of millions of years without any oversight or management. No tree consciously decides how much sugar to send through the network. No fungus plans its growth strategy. Yet the system maintains itself, balances itself, creates resilient forests that can withstand storms and droughts and outbreaks of pests. It's a reminder that complex systems don't require complexity of thought or consciousness to function effectively. The simple rules followed by individual organisms, responding to chemical signals and environmental conditions, create emergent properties at the scale of the entire forest. Cooperation and resilience emerge from basic biological processes repeated across thousands of individuals over long periods of time. As you relax here, perhaps you can imagine yourself connected to a similar network, not of fungal threads but of human relationships and communities. We too exist in webs of connection, exchanging resources and information, supporting each other through difficult times, thriving together more than we would alone. It's a natural pattern, this tendency toward connection, visible in forests and human societies alike. The slow motion world, how plants move. Plants seem stationary, rooted to one spot for their entire lives, but they're actually in constant motion. Its movement so slow we rarely notice it, movement measured in hours or days rather than seconds, but it's real movement nonetheless, driven by growth and environmental responses that have evolved over hundreds of millions of years. Let's start with something you've probably seen but might not have consciously noticed: plants growing toward light. This phenomenon is called phototropism, and it's one of the most fundamental movements in the plant kingdom. Place a houseplant near a window, and over the course of days or weeks, you'll see it bend toward the light, its stems curving, its leaves reorienting to face the sun. This movement happens because of differential growth. Plant cells contain a hormone called auxin that promotes cell elongation. When light strikes one side of a plant stem, auxin migrates to the shadier side. The cells on that shadier side then grow longer than the cells on the sunny side, causing the stem to bend toward the light. It's elegant and simple, this chemical mechanism that causes plants to chase the sun across the sky. The response happens slowly enough that you can't see it in real time, but time-lapse photography reveals it beautifully. A seedling emerging from soil will immediately begin turning toward the nearest light source, its stem bending in a smooth arc. If you move the light source, the plant will gradually reorient to follow it. The movement is persistent and inexorable, like the sweep of an hour hand on a clock, invisible moment by moment but obvious when observed over longer periods. Roots show the opposite behavior, a phenomenon called negative phototropism or positive gravitropism. While shoots grow toward light, roots grow away from it and toward gravity, driving downward into the soil in search of water and nutrients. This makes perfect sense from the plant's perspective. Shoots need light for photosynthesis. Roots need to penetrate the soil to access resources. The mechanism for gravitropism is similar to phototropism but responds to gravity instead of light. Specialized cells in root tips contain dense particles called statoliths that settle to the bottom of the cell in response to gravity. This provides the root with information about which direction is down. Auxin then redistributes to cause differential growth, bending the root tip downward. Some plants exhibit remarkable sensitivity to touch, a phenomenon called thigmotropism. Climbing plants like vines and peas have tendrils that curl around supports when they make contact with them. The moment a tendril touches something stable, cells on the contact side of the tendril stop growing, while cells on the opposite side continue elongating, causing the tendril to wrap around the support in a spiraling grip. This happens faster than phototropism, sometimes within minutes or hours of initial contact. The plant is responding to mechanical stimulation, translating the physical pressure of touching something into a growth response that allows it to climb. Over the course of days, a vine can climb meters upward, wrapping around any vertical structure it encounters, reaching toward the canopy. But perhaps the most fascinating plant movements are the circadian rhythms, the daily cycles that plants maintain even in the absence of external cues. Many plants exhibit what's called nyctinasty, the daily movement of leaves or flowers in response to the cycle of day and night. These movements continue even if you place the plant in constant darkness or constant light, driven by internal biological clocks. The prayer plant, Maranta leucanura, is a beautiful example of this. During the day, its leaves lie relatively flat. As evening approaches, the leaves fold upward like hands folding in prayer, hence the common name. In the morning, they unfold again. This daily rhythm continues even in controlled laboratory conditions, proof that the movement is driven by internal timing mechanisms rather than simply by light levels. Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant, takes touch responses to an extreme. Touch one of its leaves, and within seconds, the leaflets fold up and the entire leaf droops. The movement is fast enough to see in real time, driven by rapid changes in water pressure within specialized cells at the base of the leaflets. The plant appears to be playing dead, possibly as a defense against herbivores. A grazing animal expecting soft leaves might be deterred by this sudden wilting. After a few minutes, the mimosa leaf slowly reopens, returning to its normal position. The whole cycle is repeatable. You can trigger it again and again, though the plant does eventually become less responsive if overstimulated, perhaps to conserve energy. This rapid movement requires significant metabolic energy, so the plant has evolved to habituate to constant stimulation that isn't actually dangerous. Sunflowers exhibit one of the most dramatic examples of plant movement. Young sunflower plants track the sun across the sky during the day, a behavior called heliotropism. In the morning, the flower heads face east. As the day progresses, they slowly turn to follow the sun, ending up facing west by evening. At night, they slowly return to facing east, ready to greet the sunrise. This movement is driven by differential growth of cells on opposite sides of the stem, similar to phototropism. But unlike simple phototropism, heliotropism involves anticipation. The flower begins turning east before dawn, suggesting it's following an internal clock as much as responding to actual sunlight. Once the sunflower is fully mature and has finished growing, the movement stops, and the flower head remains fixed facing east. Scientists believe this sun tracking provides advantages during the plant's development. Facing the sun throughout the day maximizes photosynthesis. The east-facing orientation at dawn also helps the flower warm up quickly in the morning, which attracts more pollinators. Bees prefer to visit warmer flowers, and east-facing sunflowers warm up faster than flowers facing other directions. From a time-lapse perspective, a field of sunflowers looks choreographed, all the flowers turning in unison to track the sun, then resetting overnight. It's a slow, graceful dance that happens too gradually for us to perceive in real time, but it's happening nonetheless, driven by growth, by chemical signals, by internal clocks and external stimuli. Trees exhibit movement too, though over much longer timescales. A tree growing on a hillside will often curve its trunk so that the branches above are more level, compensating for the slope. This is called reaction wood formation, where trees produce specialized wood tissue that generates mechanical stress, gradually bending the trunk over years or decades. If a tree is damaged in a storm and ends up leaning, it will often slowly right itself over subsequent years through reaction wood formation. The tree is responding to gravity, detecting that it's not growing vertically and producing wood that generates forces to correct the orientation. From the tree's perspective, this is essential for structural stability and for positioning leaves where they can capture the most light. Even the daily cycle of transpiration, the loss of water through leaves, causes measurable movement in trees. During the day, as the tree pulls water up from its roots to replace water lost through transpiration, the trunk actually shrinks slightly. At night, when transpiration slows, the trunk expands again as it rehydrates. The changes are small, measured in fractions of a millimeter, but they're real and measurable with sensitive instruments. Scientists have discovered that trees have a sleep-like state as well. In the dark period of the day-night cycle, leaves and branches droop slightly, a movement visible in time-lapse photography. The change is subtle, perhaps just a few centimeters in large trees, but it's consistent. The branches are at their highest during mid-afternoon and lowest just before dawn. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it appears to be related to changes in water pressure within cells, similar to the movements of the prayer plant. During the day, active photosynthesis and transpiration maintain high turgor pressure in cells. At night, with photosynthesis shut down and transpiration reduced, this pressure decreases slightly, causing the subtle drooping. This discovery suggests that plants have more sophisticated circadian rhythms than we realized. They're not just timing flowering or leaf production. They're adjusting their basic posture throughout the day-night cycle in ways that might optimize their function or conserve resources. The movements of plants remind us that life doesn't have to be fast to be alive. Plants experience the world in slow motion, their responses unfolding over hours and days rather than seconds and minutes. But the responses are just as real, just as sophisticated, just as adaptive to their environment as the rapid movements of animals. There's something deeply calming about considering this slower timescale of life. In our world of instant communication and rapid change, plants remind us that slow and steady is a viable strategy, that patience and persistence are powerful forces, that dramatic transformations can happen incrementally, one day's growth at a time. The gentle relationship between plants and water. Water is life for all organisms, but the relationship between plants and water is particularly elegant and profound. Let's explore the soothing science of how plants manage water, how they draw it from the soil, transport it through their tissues, and return it to the atmosphere in an endless cycle that has been operating since plants first colonized land. The journey of a water molecule through a plant is a story of physical forces working in perfect harmony. It begins in the soil, where water exists in the spaces between soil particles, coating their surfaces in thin films. Plant roots, with their masses of fine root hairs, penetrate deep into the soil, creating an enormous surface area for water absorption. Water enters the root through osmosis, moving from areas of higher water concentration in the soil to areas of lower concentration inside root cells. The root cells maintain this concentration gradient by accumulating solutes, dissolved minerals, and organic compounds that make the cell interior relatively less dilute than the surrounding soil water. Water naturally flows toward these areas of lower water concentration. Once water enters the root, it begins moving upward through the plant through specialized tissues called xylem. Xylem vessels are remarkable structures, essentially dead hollow tubes made from the walls of cells that have died and broken down, leaving only their sturdy cell walls to form continuous pipes from root to leaf. The question of how water moves upward through xylem puzzled scientists for many years. Pushing water up from below would require enormous pressure in the roots, and measurements showed that root pressure alone couldn't account for water reaching the tops of tall trees. The answer, it turns out, is that water is pulled upward from above rather than pushed from below. This pull comes from transpiration, the evaporation of water from leaves. As water evaporates from the tiny pores in leaves called stomata, it creates a tension, a negative pressure in the xylem. Water molecules are strongly attracted to each other through hydrogen bonding, a phenomenon called cohesion. This means that as water molecules evaporate from the leaf, they pull other water molecules up behind them through the xylem, like pulling up a chain. The column of water in the xylem remains continuous from root to leaf due to this cohesion between water molecules and due to adhesion, the attraction between water molecules and the walls of the xylem vessels. The combined effect creates a continuous column of water under tension, pulled upward by transpiration at the top and continuously replenished by water entering at the bottom through the roots. This system, called the cohesion-tension theory, can pull water to remarkable heights. The tallest trees in the world, coastal redwoods that can exceed 115 meters in height, rely on this mechanism to transport water from their roots to their topmost leaves. No pumps, no motors, just the physical properties of water and the passive pull of evaporation. The rate of water movement through a plant is substantial. A large tree might transpire hundreds of liters of water per day during the growing season. That water enters through the roots, moves up through the trunk, out through the branches to the leaves, and evaporates into the atmosphere through the stomata. It's a river in slow motion, flowing upward through wooden pipes, powered by sunshine and evaporation. Stomata are remarkable structures in their own right. These microscopic pores on leaf surfaces, each surrounded by a pair of guard cells, can open and close to regulate gas exchange and water loss. When the plant needs carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, the guard cells swell with water, causing them to curve and open the stoma. When water is scarce, the guard cells lose water and collapse, closing the stoma to reduce transpiration. This creates a fundamental trade-off for plants. To photosynthesize, they need carbon dioxide, which means they must open their stomata. But opening stomata allows water to escape. During drought, plants face a difficult balance between gathering carbon dioxide for growth and conserving precious water. Different plant species have evolved different strategies for managing this trade-off. Some plants, like cacti and succulents, have evolved a special photosynthetic pathway called CM photosynthesis. These plants open their stomata at night when the air is cooler and humidity is higher, minimizing water loss. They capture carbon dioxide and store it in organic acids. During the day, they keep their stomata closed to conserve water and release the stored carbon dioxide internally for photosynthesis. It's a clever adaptation that allows them to photosynthesize while minimizing transpiration. The relationship between plants and water extends beyond individual organisms to shape entire ecosystems and climate patterns. Forests, in particular, play a crucial role in the water cycle. The collective transpiration of trees adds enormous amounts of water vapor to the atmosphere, water that eventually falls as rain, sometimes hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. In the Amazon rainforest, scientists estimate that the trees recycle water through transpiration so effectively that rain falling in the western Amazon has passed through vegetation and returned to the atmosphere as much as 6 times by the time it reaches the Atlantic coast. The forest creates its own rain to some extent, the water cycling through the ecosystem rather than simply flowing directly from ocean to river. This relationship means that forests don't just depend on rainfall. They help create it. Deforestation can thus trigger changes in rainfall patterns, not just in the immediate area but in regions hundreds of kilometers away that depend on moisture generated by the forest. The trees and the water cycle are intimately connected in feedback loops that have stabilized over thousands of years. Plants also influence water movement at the watershed scale. Root systems help water penetrate into the soil rather than running off the surface. A forest floor covered in leaf litter acts like a sponge, absorbing rain and slowly releasing it into streams, rather than creating flash floods. The roots bind soil particles together, preventing erosion and maintaining the structure of the soil. When rain falls on a forest, the canopy intercepts some of it, water collecting on leaves and bark. Some of this intercepted water evaporates directly back into the atmosphere without ever reaching the ground. The rain that does reach the ground is distributed more evenly, dripping from the canopy rather than hitting the soil in heavy drops that could cause erosion. Underground, the root systems create channels in the soil that allow water to penetrate deeper. Mycorrhizal fungi extend this effect even further, their fine hyphae creating micropores that improve water infiltration and storage. A forest soil can hold water like a natural reservoir, slowly releasing it to streams and rivers over weeks or months, maintaining base flow even during dry periods. This moderating effect on water flow is one of the most valuable ecosystem services forests provide. Downstream communities depend on this water regulation, the steady flow maintained by the forest's presence. When forests are removed, streams often become more flashy, with high flows immediately after rain and very low flows during dry periods, making water management more difficult. Individual plants have evolved fascinating strategies for managing water at the cellular level. Plant cells are surrounded by rigid cell walls, and the pressure of water inside the cell, called turgor pressure, keeps the cell inflated and firm. When cells are full of water, they're turgid, and the plant appears healthy and upright. When cells lose water, turgor pressure decreases, and the plant wilts. This wilting is actually a protective response. When water is scarce, reducing turgor pressure causes leaves to droop, which reduces their surface area exposed to the sun and thus reduces transpiration. It's an automatic water conservation mechanism triggered by water stress. Once water becomes available again, the cells rehydrate, turgor pressure returns, and the plant perks back up. Some plants have evolved specialized water storage tissues. Succulent plants store water in thick leaves or stems, expanding when water is plentiful and slowly drawing on these reserves during drought. The tissues are adapted with special cells that can expand enormously to accommodate water storage and thick waxy cuticles that minimize water loss. The soothing aspect of the plant-water relationship is its cyclical nature, the endless circulation of water through the Earth system with plants playing a central role. Water evaporates from oceans, condenses into clouds, falls as rain, enters soil, is absorbed by roots, transpires from leaves, returns to the atmosphere, and the cycle continues. It's been going on for hundreds of millions of years, this grand circulation with plants as active participants. Every plant you see is part of this cycle. The tree outside your window is pulling water from the soil and releasing it into the air. The houseplant on your shelf is doing the same on a smaller scale. All plants are connected to this larger pattern, this flow of water through the living and non-living world. There's something meditative about water flowing through xylem, about the patient absorption of moisture by roots, about the gentle release of water vapor from leaves. These processes operate constantly, quietly, without fanfare. They've been operating since the first land plants, refined and perfected over hundreds of millions of years into the elegant systems we observe today. The peaceful chemistry of plant medicine. Plants produce an astonishing array of chemical compounds, many of which have profound effects on human physiology. Let's explore the gentle chemistry of medicinal plants, understanding how and why plants create these compounds, and how they interact with our bodies in calming, healing ways. Plants are extraordinary chemists. Through evolution, they've developed the ability to synthesize thousands of different organic compounds, far more than they need for basic metabolism. These compounds, called secondary metabolites, serve various functions for the plant, defending against herbivores, attracting pollinators, competing with other plants, or protecting against pathogens. Many of these compounds also happen to affect human biology in beneficial ways. Lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, produces an essential oil that humans have valued for millennia for its calming properties. The primary active compound in lavender oil is linalool, a terpenoid alcohol that makes up 30 to 50% of the oil. Linalool has a distinctive floral scent that most people find pleasant and relaxing. But lavender's calming effect isn't just about the pleasant smell. Research has shown that linalool can affect neurotransmitter systems in the brain. It appears to modulate the activity of GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. GABA reduces neural activity, creating a calming effect throughout the nervous system. When you inhale lavender scent, linalool molecules enter your nasal passages and interact with olfactory receptors. These receptors send signals to the olfactory bulb and then to the limbic system, including the amygdala and hippocampus, brain regions involved in emotion and memory. The presence of linalool appears to enhance GABAergic signaling in these regions, reducing anxiety and promoting relaxation. Studies have shown that lavender aromatherapy can reduce anxiety levels in various settings. Patients in dental waiting rooms, people undergoing medical procedures, and individuals with generalized anxiety disorder have all shown reduced anxiety when exposed to lavender scent. The effect is modest but measurable, a gentle nudge toward calm rather than a powerful sedative. For the lavender plant, linalool serves a different purpose. It's part of the plant's chemical defense system. Many insects find linalool unpleasant or even toxic. The compound can disrupt insect nervous systems at higher concentrations, deterring herbivores from eating the plant. The same compound that calms human nerves protects the plant from being consumed. This is a common pattern in medicinal plants. Compounds that plants produce for their own protection often have biological activity in humans. Sometimes these effects are harmful, as with poisonous plants, but often they're beneficial, affecting our physiology in subtle ways that can promote health or reduce suffering. Chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla, is another plant famous for its calming properties. Chamomile tea has been consumed for thousands of years as a mild sedative and sleep aid. The active compounds in chamomile include apigenin, a flavonoid that acts as a mild tranquilizer. Apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by anti-anxiety medications like Valium and Xanax. However, apigenin's effect is much gentler than pharmaceutical benzodiazepines. It reduces anxiety and promotes sleep without the strong sedation or risk of dependence associated with benzodiazepine drugs. The mechanism is elegant. GABA receptors in neurons have binding sites for benzodiazepines. When a benzodiazepine or a similar compound like apigenin binds to these sites, it enhances the effect of GABA, making neurons more responsive to the calming neurotransmitter. This increases inhibitory signaling throughout the brain, reducing neural excitability and promoting a state of calm. For the chamomile plant, flavonoids like apigenin serve multiple purposes. They act as antioxidants, protecting plant cells from damage by reactive oxygen species. They provide UV protection, absorbing harmful ultraviolet light that could damage DNA. They also play roles in plant-insect interactions, sometimes attracting beneficial pollinators and sometimes deterring harmful pests. Valeriana officinalis, has been used as a sleep aid for more than 2,000 years. Ancient Greeks and Romans wrote about its sedative properties. The root of valerian contains a complex mixture of compounds including valerianic acid and various valipotriates. These compounds appear to affect GABA systems in multiple ways. Valerianic acid can inhibit the breakdown of GABA, allowing the neurotransmitter to remain active for longer periods. It may also affect the release of GABA from neurons. The overall effect is increased GABAergic activity, leading to sedation and sleep promotion. Research on valerian's effectiveness has produced mixed results. Some studies show significant improvements in sleep quality, while others show minimal effects. This variability might be due to differences in valerian preparations, individual differences in how people metabolize the compounds, or the subjective nature of sleep quality assessment. But many people report that valerian helps them fall asleep more easily and sleep more soundly. From the plant's perspective, the compounds in valerian root likely evolved for protection. Underground plant organs like roots, rhizomes, and tubers are vulnerable to being eaten by insects, nematodes, and fungi, producing defensive compounds that are toxic or repellent to these organisms provides protection. The fact that these same compounds affect human brain chemistry is coincidental from the plant's perspective, but fortunate from ours. passion flower, Passiflora incarnata, produces compounds that enhance GABA signaling through yet another mechanism. Extracts of passion flower appear to inhibit GABA reuptake, allowing the neurotransmitter to remain in synapses for longer periods. This prolongs the calming effect of GABA on neurons. Traditional use of passion flower for anxiety and insomnia has some support from clinical studies. People taking passion flower extract report reduced anxiety symptoms, improved sleep quality, and fewer racing thoughts before sleep. The effects are subtle but appreciated by many users who prefer herbal remedies to pharmaceutical options. Lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, contains compounds including rosmarinic acid and flavonoids that appear to have calming effects through multiple pathways. The plant has been used since the Middle Ages to reduce anxiety and improve mood. Modern research suggests it may increase acetylcholine levels in the brain by inhibiting the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, which normally breaks down this neurotransmitter. Acetylcholine is involved in memory, learning, and attention, but it also plays roles in regulating anxiety and mood. By preserving acetylcholine, lemon balm may help maintain cognitive function while promoting a sense of calm. Studies have shown improvements in mood, reduced anxiety, and better cognitive performance in people taking lemon balm extract. The pattern across all these medicinal plants is similar. They produce complex mixtures of organic compounds for their own purposes, primarily defense against herbivores and pathogens. Through chance and evolution, many of these compounds happen to interact with human neurochemistry in beneficial ways. They affect neurotransmitter systems that regulate mood, anxiety, sleep, and cognition. The effects are generally subtle, especially compared to pharmaceutical drugs that are designed to target specific receptors with high affinity. But this subtlety can be an advantage. Gentle modulation of neurotransmitter systems is less likely to cause side effects or dependence compared to powerful pharmaceutical interventions. There's also something psychologically soothing about the idea of plant medicine. Using remedies that come directly from plants that have been used by humans for hundreds or thousands of years, that connect us to traditional knowledge and to the botanical world. The ritual of preparing and consuming herbal tea, the familiar sense of lavender or chamomile, the knowledge that these plants grew in soil and sunlight, all contribute to the therapeutic experience. This doesn't mean plant medicines are always the best choice. For serious medical conditions, pharmaceutical drugs developed through rigorous research and testing are often more effective and appropriate. But for mild to moderate symptoms, for gentle support of well-being, for people who prefer natural remedies, medicinal plants offer real benefits backed by both traditional use and modern research. The chemistry of these plants reminds us of the deep connections between all life. The same neurotransmitter systems that regulate insect behavior are present in modified form in human brains. The compounds plants produce to protect themselves from insects can modulate our own neural signaling. We're all built from the same basic biochemical toolkit, the same evolutionary heritage, variations on common themes. As you rest here, you might imagine the gentle influence of these plant compounds, molecules that traveled from soil through plant tissues, concentrated in leaves or flowers or roots, extracted and prepared, entering your body, crossing the blood-brain barrier, finding their way to receptors and neurons, subtly shifting the balance of excitation and inhibition, promoting the calm that leads to rest. Photosynthesis, the most calming process in nature. Let's turn our attention to photosynthesis, the fundamental process by which plants capture energy from sunlight and use it to build the molecules of life. This is perhaps the most important chemical reaction on Earth, the foundation of nearly all ecosystems, and when you understand it in detail, it's also one of the most elegant and calming processes in nature. Photosynthesis is, at its heart, a process of transformation and balance. Take simple, abundant raw materials, carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil, and combines them using energy from sunlight to create glucose, a simple sugar that stores energy in its chemical bonds. In the process, oxygen is released as a byproduct, the oxygen that we and all other aerobic organisms depend on. The overall equation looks simple. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules of water, combined with light energy, yield 1 molecule of glucose plus 6 molecules of oxygen. But this simple equation conceals extraordinary complexity, a series of precisely orchestrated chemical reactions that occur in specialized structures within plant cells. Photosynthesis takes place primarily in the leaves, in specialized organelles called chloroplasts. These are descendants of ancient cyanobacteria that were engulfed by early eukaryotic cells more than 1 billion years ago and eventually became permanent residents, an example of endosymbiosis that fundamentally transformed the evolution of life on Earth. Inside each chloroplast are stacks of membrane-bound structures called thylakoids, which contain the chlorophyll and other pigments that capture light energy. The thylakoids are arranged in stacks called grana, surrounded by a fluid called the stroma, where other reactions occur. The whole structure is elegant and efficient, organized to maximize the capture and use of light energy. Chlorophyll is the primary light-absorbing pigment. It's a complex organic molecule with a magnesium atom at its center, surrounded by a ring structure similar to the heme in hemoglobin. This structure is particularly good at absorbing red and blue wavelengths of light while reflecting green light, which is why plants appear green to our eyes. When a photon of light strikes a chlorophyll molecule, it excites an electron to a higher energy state. This excited electron is then passed to a series of other molecules in what's called an electron transport chain. As the electron moves from molecule to molecule, losing energy at each step, that energy is used to pump hydrogen ions across the thylakoid membrane, creating a concentration gradient. This is where photosynthesis becomes particularly elegant. The concentration gradient of hydrogen ions represents stored energy, like water behind a dam. When these ions flow back across the membrane through a protein called ATP synthase, their movement drives the synthesis of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the universal energy currency of cells. ATP synthase is a molecular machine of extraordinary beauty. It's essentially a rotary motor driven by the flow of hydrogen ions. As ions pass through the protein, they cause part of it to spin, and this mechanical rotation is coupled to chemical reactions that attach phosphate groups to ADP, creating ATP. It's a direct conversion of the energy of moving ions into chemical bond energy, happening billions of times per second in every chloroplast. Meanwhile, the electrons that were initially excited by light energy eventually reach a molecule of NADP+, reducing it to NADPH. This is another energy-carrying molecule that will be used in the next stage of photosynthesis. The electrons that leave chlorophyll must be replaced, and they come from water molecules. Water is split, releasing oxygen as a byproduct, providing electrons, and releasing hydrogen ions that contribute to the gradient across the thylakoid membrane. This splitting of water is remarkable. It's one of the most thermodynamically difficult reactions in biology, requiring substantial energy input. But the energy captured from sunlight is sufficient to overcome this barrier, breaking the strong bonds in water molecules. This is the source of all the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere, this splitting of water in chloroplasts, repeated trillions upon trillions of times per second across the planet's vegetation. The first stage of photosynthesis, occurring in the thylakoids and called the light-dependent reactions, has now produced ATP and NADPH. These energy-carrying molecules power the second stage, the light-independent reactions or Calvin cycle, which occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. The Calvin cycle is where carbon dioxide from the air is fixed into organic molecules. The process begins when CO2 combines with a 5-carbon sugar called ribulose bisphosphate, catalyzed by an enzyme called rubus-CO. This enzyme is probably the most abundant protein on Earth, present in enormous quantities in every photosynthetic organism. The 6-carbon product of this initial combination is unstable and immediately splits into 2 3-carbon molecules. These are then reduced using the energy from ATP and NADPH, eventually forming glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P. Most of the G3P molecules are recycled to regenerate ribulose bisphosphate, allowing the cycle to continue. But some G3P exits the cycle and is used to build glucose and other organic molecules. The cycle must turn 6 times, fixing 6 molecules of CO2 to produce 1 molecule of glucose. Each turn requires 3 ATP and 2 NADPH molecules, energy provided by the light-dependent reactions. The whole system is balanced, efficient, sustainable. As long as light and raw materials are available, it continues, building the organic molecules that the plant needs for growth and that ultimately support entire food webs. There's something deeply calming about the cyclical nature of photosynthesis. The Calvin cycle literally goes round and round, regenerating its starting materials, continuously fixing carbon, converting inorganic carbon dioxide into organic molecules. It's been cycling like this for billions of years, the most fundamental metabolism on the planet operating with unwavering consistency. The efficiency of photosynthesis varies depending on conditions, but in optimal circumstances, plants can convert around 6% of the light energy that strikes their leaves into chemical energy stored in glucose. This might not sound impressive, but it's actually quite remarkable given the constraints of chemistry and biology. And this 6%, repeated across millions of square kilometers of forest, grassland, and ocean, represents an enormous flow of energy from the sun into Earth's biosphere. Consider the numbers for a moment. Earth's photosynthetic organisms capture approximately 100 terawatts of energy from sunlight, roughly 6 times current human energy consumption. This captured energy supports essentially all life on Earth. Herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat herbivores, decomposers break down dead organic matter, and all of us ultimately depend on the energy that photosynthesis captures from the sun. The oxygen released by photosynthesis is equally important. Every breath you take contains oxygen molecules that were recently released by plants and phytoplankton. The atmosphere contains about 21% oxygen, and all of this oxygen was produced by photosynthesis. Without the continuous operation of this process, oxygen levels would gradually decline as it's consumed by respiration, combustion, and geological processes. In this way, Photosynthesis maintains the atmosphere in a state far from chemical equilibrium. An atmosphere containing 21% oxygen and trace amounts of carbon dioxide is thermodynamically unstable. Left to chemical equilibrium, oxygen would react with rocks and organic matter, and carbon dioxide levels would be much higher. Photosynthesis continuously regenerates oxygen and removes carbon dioxide, maintaining conditions suitable for complex life. This maintenance happens silently, invisibly, in chloroplasts too small to see without a microscope, in leaves that rustle in the breeze, in plants that go about their business without fanfare or recognition. Every plant around you, from the mightiest tree to the smallest blade of grass, is performing this chemical miracle, splitting water, fixing carbon, releasing oxygen, capturing sunlight and transforming it into the stuff of life. There's a meditative quality to understanding this process in detail. The precision of it, the elegant choreography of electrons and protons and carbon atoms, all happening according to the laws of chemistry and physics, all self-organizing and self-regulating, all operating continuously as long as conditions allow. Photosynthesis connects plants to the cosmos. The light they capture left the sun 8 minutes ago, traveled 150 million kilometers through space, passed through Earth's atmosphere, and struck a leaf. There, the electromagnetic energy of photons, produced by nuclear fusion reactions in the sun's core, is captured by chlorophyll and converted into chemical energy that sustains life on Earth. Plants are solar panels, but infinitely more sophisticated than anything humans have engineered. And unlike human technology, photosynthesis is renewable and sustainable by design. The plant builds its own solar panels, its leaves, from materials extracted from air and soil using energy from previous photosynthesis. The structures self-repair, grow, adapt to conditions. When the leaf dies and decomposes, the materials return to the environment to be used again. The entire system operates in cycles, producing no waste that can't be recycled. As you rest here, consider that your own existence depends on photosynthesis. The food you eat, whether plant or animal, traces back to photosynthesis as the original source of energy. The oxygen you breathe was produced by photosynthesis. The very atoms in your body, the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that make up the bulk of your mass, were likely cycled through photosynthetic organisms at some point. You are connected to plants through these fundamental processes, part of a planetary system of energy flow and matter cycling that has operated for billions of years. This connection is not metaphorical but physical, chemical, real. The same atoms, the same elements, cycling through different forms, organized temporarily into your body, into plant bodies, into soil and water and air, an endless transformation driven by energy from the sun and mediated by the quiet chemistry of photosynthesis. Forest bathing, the science of plant-human connection. There's a practice that originated in Japan in the 1980s called forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, which means taking in the forest atmosphere. It's the simple practice of spending time in forests, walking slowly, breathing deeply, engaging all your senses. What started as a wellness trend has become the subject of serious scientific research, revealing measurable benefits to human health from exposure to forest environments. The research shows something remarkable. Being in forests reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, improves immune function, enhances mood, increases ability to focus, accelerates recovery from illness, and may even reduce cancer risk. These aren't small effects or wishful thinking. They're measurable changes in human physiology that occur when we spend time among trees. Part of the explanation lies in compounds called phytoncides, antimicrobial volatile organic compounds emitted by trees and other plants. Phyton is Greek for plant, and cide means to kill, so phytoncides are literally plant-killing substances. Trees produce these compounds to protect themselves from bacteria, fungi, and insects. Different tree species produce different phytoncides. Coniferous trees like pine, spruce, and cedar emit alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, and limonene, compounds that give these trees their characteristic fresh scent. Oak trees produce isoprene. Many plants produce alcohols, aldehydes, and other volatile compounds, creating a complex chemical atmosphere in forests. When you walk through a forest, you're breathing in these phytoncides, and remarkably, they affect human physiology in beneficial ways. Studies in Japan and South Korea have shown that forest air containing phytoncides increases the activity and number of natural killer cells in the human immune system. Natural killer cells are a type of white blood cell that plays a crucial role in the immune response, particularly against viruses and cancer cells. They can recognize and destroy cells that have been infected or transformed without needing prior exposure to the pathogen. Having more active natural killer cells means your immune system is better prepared to fight infections and potentially to detect and destroy cancer cells. The research is quite specific. Participants who spent time in forests showed increased natural killer cell activity that persisted for days or even weeks after the forest exposure. The magnitude of the effect correlated with phytoncide concentrations in the forest air. Controlled laboratory experiments exposing people to phytoncides showed similar immune system effects, confirming that these plant compounds were responsible. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it appears that inhaling phytoncides affects gene expression in immune cells, upregulating genes involved in natural killer cell function and anti-cancer proteins. It's a direct chemical communication between plants and human immune systems, an interaction that likely has deep evolutionary roots. Our ancestors lived in close contact with plants for millions of years. The human immune system evolved in environments rich with plant compounds. It's possible that our physiology expects these chemical signals and responds positively when they're present. Modern urban environments, largely devoid of natural phytoncide exposure, might represent a historically novel condition that our immune systems aren't optimized for. Beyond immune function, forest exposure affects stress physiology. Multiple studies have measured cortisol levels, heart rate variability, blood pressure, and other stress markers in people before and after forest walks. The results consistently show reductions in physiological stress indicators. Heart rate variability, the variation in time intervals between heartbeats, is particularly interesting. Higher variability is generally associated with better health and stress resilience, indicating that the autonomic nervous system is flexible and responsive. Time in forests increases heart rate variability, suggesting improved autonomic function and reduced sympathetic nervous system activation. The mechanisms here likely involve multiple sensory pathways. The visual experience of nature, the complex patterns of leaves and branches against sky, the fractal geometries that characterize natural environments, all appear to be inherently restorative to human attention and mood. Attention restoration theory, developed by environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, proposes that natural environments allow the directed attention faculty to rest and recover. Directed attention is the ability to focus on specific tasks while ignoring distractions. It's essential for modern life but easily fatigued. Natural environments capture attention in a gentle, effortless way they call soft fascination, allowing directed attention to rest. Forests, with their complexity and dynamism, provide ideal environments for this kind of attentional restoration. The sounds of forests also contribute to their restorative effects. Natural sounds like birdsong, wind in trees, flowing water, tend to reduce stress and improve mood more effectively than silence or artificial sounds. These acoustic environments likely signal safety and abundance to our evolved psychology. Throughout human evolution, rich natural soundscapes indicated environments with water, food, and absence of major threats. Even the air quality in forests contributes to their benefits. Trees remove air pollutants, and forests have higher oxygen levels and humidity than urban environments. The temperature in forests is often more moderate, shaded from extreme heat or cold. All these factors contribute to the overall sense of comfort and well-being people report when spending time in forests. Soil microbes might play a role too. Mycobacterium vaccae, a soil bacterium, has been shown in animal studies to activate serotonin neurons in the brain and reduce anxiety-like behaviors. Exposure to soil, either through direct contact or by breathing aerosolized soil particles, might provide mental health benefits through interaction with these microorganisms. The biophilia hypothesis, proposed by biologist E.O. Wilson, suggests that humans have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. This tendency evolved because connection to nature was essential for survival, helping our ancestors locate food, water, shelter, and safe environments. In modern industrialized societies, many people are largely disconnected from nature, potentially causing psychological distress. Forest bathing and similar practices represent an attempt to restore this connection. The health benefits observed might result from satisfying this evolved need for nature contact. When we spend time in forests, surrounded by living plants, breathing air rich with plant compounds, hearing natural sounds, we're experiencing something fundamental to human well-being. You don't need pristine wilderness to experience these benefits. Even urban parks and green spaces, street trees, and indoor plants provide some of the same advantages. Studies have shown that hospital patients with window views of trees recover faster than those with views of buildings. Office workers with plants in their workspace report better focus and job satisfaction. Children with more access to green space show better cognitive development and mental health. Plants improve indoor air quality by removing certain pollutants and increasing humidity. While the effect is modest and you'd need many plants to significantly purify air in a typical room, even a few plants create a more pleasant environment. The psychological benefit of caring for plants, watching them grow, having living things in your space, adds to their value. There's something profoundly healing about the presence of plants. Their quiet growth, their patient persistence, their connection to larger natural cycles, all provide a counterpoint to the rapid pace and artificial environments of modern life. They remind us that we're biological organisms, evolved in natural environments, part of ecosystems that have sustained life for hundreds of millions of years. As you lie here, you might imagine yourself in a forest, surrounded by trees, breathing air rich with phytoncides, your stress hormones declining, your immune system strengthening, your parasympathetic nervous system activating, bringing you toward rest. Whether you're actually in a forest or simply imagining one, the human body responds to the presence or even the thought of nature, a testament to how deeply connected we are to the botanical world. Ancient trees. Lessons in patience and persistence. Let's turn our attention now to some of the oldest living things on Earth. Ancient trees that have been growing for thousands of years, silent witnesses to vast stretches of human history. These remarkable organisms teach us about patience, persistence, and the power of slow, steady growth over immense timescales. In the White Mountains of California, at elevations around 3,000 meters, grow bristlecone pines, Pinus longiva. These trees inhabit one of the harshest environments on Earth, where temperatures swing widely between day and night, where the growing season is short, where soil is poor and water scarce. Yet some of these trees have been alive for more than 4,800 years. Consider what that means. A bristlecone pine germinated 4,800 years ago, sprouted around 2,800 BCE, when the Egyptian pyramids were being built, when Stonehenge was under construction, before the invention of writing in many parts of the world. That seedling has grown continuously through the entire span of recorded human history and beyond. The growth of bristlecone pines is extraordinarily slow. In harsh years, a tree might add a ring of growth less than half a millimeter wide. At this rate, a tree 5 meters in circumference at the base has lived thousands of years. Every centimeter of diameter represents decades or centuries of growth. This slow growth is part of what allows such longevity. The wood produced is extremely dense and resinous, highly resistant to decay and insect attack. When branches or portions of the tree die, the dead wood can persist for thousands of years, sculpted by wind and ice into fantastic shapes. Living strips of bark and sapwood remain on portions of the trunk, sometimes just 10% of the tree's circumference, enough to support a few branches of foliage but not requiring extensive resources. The tree's form reflects its harsh environment. Gnarled, twisted, stripped of bark on most surfaces, with just a few living branches producing needles. It looks ancient, weathered, reduced to essentials. Yet it persists, photosynthesizing during the brief growing season, adding microscopic layers of growth, continuing year after year after year. Scientists study bristlecone pines for many reasons, but one of the most important is dendrochronology, the science of dating events using tree rings. Because each ring represents 1 year's growth, and because the width of rings varies with climate conditions, tree rings create a record of past climate. By matching ring patterns between living and dead trees, scientists have created continuous chronologies extending back more than 11,000 years. This means we can date archaeological artifacts with precision, we can reconstruct past climates, we can understand how ecosystems responded to climate variations over millennia. All from the patient record written in tree rings, 1 ring per year, accumulating over thousands of years into an archive of incomparable value. The oldest known living bristlecone pine, nicknamed Methuselah, is 4,853 years old as of 2025. Its exact location is kept secret to protect it from vandalism. But somewhere in the White Mountains, this tree continues to grow, adding another microscopic ring of wood each year, as it has for nearly 5 millennia. In California's Sierra Nevada, giant sequoias, Sequoiadendron giganteum, represent a different kind of longevity. These are the most massive living things on Earth by volume. The largest, called General Sherman, has a trunk volume of around 1,487 cubic meters and weighs an estimated 2,000 tons. It's approximately 2,200 years old. Giant sequoias grow in groves on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada, between 1,400 and 2,150 meters elevation. They can grow to more than 80 meters tall with trunk diameters exceeding 8 meters. Despite their massive size, they start from seeds smaller than oat flakes, about 4 to 5 millimeters long. The transformation from tiny seed to enormous tree takes centuries. Sequoias grow relatively quickly when young, adding height at rates of half a meter or more per year under good conditions. But they continue growing throughout their lives, adding mass even when height growth slows. A mature sequoia might add the equivalent of a tree 50 feet tall and 1 foot in diameter in a single year, laying down new wood across its entire massive trunk and branches. These trees shape their environment. Their thick, fire-resistant bark allows them to survive periodic wildfires that kill competing species. In fact, sequoias depend on fire to reproduce. Their cones can remain closed on the tree for decades, waiting for fire. The heat causes the cones to open and release seeds into soil that's been cleared of undergrowth and enriched with ash, providing ideal germination conditions. The relationship between sequoias and fire demonstrates how ecosystems co-evolve over long timescales. Fire has always been part of Sierra Nevada ecology, caused by lightning or maintained by Native Americans. Sequoias evolved to not just tolerate fire but require it for successful reproduction. Suppressing fire, as forest managers did for much of the 20th century, actually harms sequoia groves by allowing fuel to accumulate and preventing seed germination. Coast redwoods, Sequoia sempervirens, are the tallest trees on Earth. The tallest known specimen, named Hyperion, measures 115.92 meters tall. These trees grow in a narrow band along the California coast where summer fog provides crucial moisture. They can live 2,000 years or more. Coast redwoods create their own climate to some extent. The fog that nurtures them collects in their canopies, drips to the forest floor, providing water during the dry summer months when otherwise there would be drought. The trees are so tall that their uppermost branches exist in different climate conditions than their roots, experiencing different temperatures, wind speeds, and moisture levels. In the redwood canopy, an entire ecosystem exists. Soil accumulates on large branches, supporting ferns, huckleberries, and even hemlock trees growing as epiphytes hundreds of feet above the ground. Salamanders live their entire lives in the canopy, never descending to earth, surviving on the moisture and invertebrate prey available in this aerial habitat. The redwood forest has vertical structure and complexity that creates numerous ecological niches. These ancient trees demonstrate fundamental principles about growth and persistence. They grow slowly, particularly in their most extreme environments. They're adapted to disturbance, surviving fires, storms, even losing large portions of their structure and continuing to live. They're not immortal, all trees eventually die, but they're remarkably resilient, capable of persisting for millennia through varying conditions. Part of their longevity comes from modular growth. Trees grow by adding new modules, branches, twigs, leaves, while old modules die and are shed. The tree is constantly renewing itself. There's no theoretical maximum age for a tree, unlike animals whose bodies are integrated wholes that age as units. A tree can keep adding new growth as long as conditions allow, and its vascular system can transport water to its leaves. Ancient trees also benefit from their size. A large tree has extensive root systems that access deep water and nutrients. It has enormous reserves of stored resources in its trunk and roots. It's less vulnerable to many threats that kill smaller trees. Fire might scorch its bark but not kill it. Drought might slow growth but not cause death. The tree has time and resources to recover from damage that would be fatal to a smaller, younger individual. There's something deeply calming about contemplating these ancient trees. They remind us that slow, steady persistence over long time periods creates results that rapid action cannot achieve. You cannot rush the growth of a bristlecone pine or a giant sequoia. They take centuries or millennia to reach their mature form. But the result is something magnificent, something resilient, something that endures. In our human lives, full of urgency and rapid change, ancient trees offer an alternative perspective. They suggest that some things can't be hurried, that patience is sometimes the most powerful force, that steady accumulation of small increments creates profound results over sufficient time. These trees were seedlings when empires we now study as ancient history were at their height. They grew through the entire span of human civilization as we know it. They'll likely continue growing long after we're gone, adding their microscopic rings, persisting in their patient way, connecting the deep past to the distant future. As you drift here towards sleep, you might imagine yourself as one of these ancient trees. Rooted deeply, growing slowly, patient and persistent, accumulating growth increment by increment, season by season, year after year, persisting through changing conditions, weathering storms, continuing to reach toward the light, adding new growth even as old growth falls away, part of cycles that span centuries and millennia, connected to earth and sky, to water and sun, steady and enduring and calm. The gentle giants, ancient and extraordinary trees. High in the White Mountains of Eastern California, where the air grows thin and the landscape becomes a study in extremes, there exists a forest unlike any other on Earth. This is not a place of lush greenery or dense canopies. Instead, it is a realm of weathered stone and alkaline soil, where temperatures plummet well below freezing in winter and the growing season barely stretches beyond a few short weeks each year. The ground here is dolomite, a type of limestone that creates soil so harsh and unforgiving that most plants cannot even take root. Yet it is precisely in this seemingly inhospitable environment, at elevations between 9,800 and 11,000 feet above sea level, that some of the oldest living beings on our planet make their home. These are the bristlecone pines, and they have been standing sentinel in these mountains for thousands upon thousands of years. When you first encounter one of these ancient trees, you might not immediately recognize its significance. They are not tall by the standards of other forest giants. Most bristlecone pines reach heights of only 30 to 60 feet, modest compared to their towering cousins in more forgiving climates. Their trunks are gnarled and twisted, sculpted by countless centuries of wind, ice, and sun. Much of their wood appears dead, stripped bare and polished smooth by the elements until it gleams like bone in the mountain light. And yet, somewhere within that weathered form, life persists. a thin strip of living bark, sometimes no more than 10 inches wide, continues to transport water and nutrients from the roots to a cluster of green needles that somehow manage to carry out photosynthesis in this brutal environment. The oldest known bristlecone pine that we can verify with absolute certainty is a tree called Methuselah, named after the biblical patriarch said to have lived 969 years. But Methuselah's age makes that ancient human seem like a child. This tree, growing somewhere in the ancient bristlecone pine forest of the Inyo National Forest, has been alive for 4,857 years. Let that number settle in your mind for a moment. 4,857 years. When Methuselah was a seedling, barely breaking through the rocky soil and stretching its first delicate roots into the earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza had only recently been completed. The city of Babylon was approaching the height of its power. The Minoan civilization was flourishing on the island of Crete. The Bronze Age was still in its prime across the Mediterranean world, and the written word was still a relatively new innovation for humanity. Methuselah has witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations from its mountain perch. It was already ancient when Rome was founded, already weathered and wise when the Persian Empire stretched across the known world, already a survivor of millennia when the first Europeans set foot on the Americas. It has lived through ice ages and warming periods, through droughts that lasted decades and winters that seemed endless. It has felt the ground shake beneath it during earthquakes and has been struck by lightning more times than we could ever count. And through all of this, through every challenge that time could throw at it, Methuselah has continued to grow, to photosynthesize, to produce seeds, to persist. But here is something that makes Methuselah's story even more remarkable. The United States Forest Service does not reveal the exact location of this tree within the grove where it grows. There is no plaque marking its position, no sign pointing the way to the world's oldest tree. This is a deliberate choice made to protect Methuselah from vandalism, from the thoughtless actions of those who might want to carve their initials into ancient bark or take a piece of living history as a souvenir. So when you walk the 4.5-mile loop trail through the Methuselah Grove, you pass by this ancient being, this living witness to nearly 5 millennia of Earth's history. But you do not know which tree it is. Methuselah stands among its fellows, just one more twisted, beautiful form in a landscape of twisted, beautiful forms, keeping its secrets and continuing its slow, patient life. And Methuselah is not even the oldest bristlecone pine that has ever been found. In 2012, researchers reported discovering another Great Basin bristlecone pine nearby that appeared to be more than 5,060 years old. If this age is accurate, and there is some debate about the verification process, then this unnamed tree was already growing when the first Egyptian dynasties were being established, when Stonehenge was being constructed, when humans were just beginning to work copper and create the first true cities. There was also a tree called Prometheus, growing on Wheeler Peak in what is now Great Basin National Park in Nevada. In 1964, a researcher was granted permission to take a core sample from this tree. When the rings were counted, it was discovered that Prometheus was 4,862 years old. Tragically, the tree had to be cut down to obtain this information, and so one of the oldest living things on Earth was sacrificed to tell us exactly how old it was. The lesson learned from Prometheus, that some knowledge comes at too high a cost, helped shape the protective policies that now safeguard Methuselah and others of its kind. The bristlecone pines belong to a species called Pinus longiva, the Great Basin bristlecone pine, one of 3 closely related species that share the name bristlecone pine. The name itself comes from the small, prickly bristles that form on their immature cones, delicate points that catch the light and seem almost to glow against the dark purple of the young cones. But everything about these trees speaks to adaptation, to a life strategy honed over millions of years to thrive where other trees cannot even survive. Consider their needles, those deep yellow-green clusters that come in bundles of 5 and measure only 1 to 1.5 inches in length. In most trees, needles or leaves are replaced every few years at most. The tree must constantly expend energy to grow new photosynthetic tissue to maintain the machinery that converts sunlight into food. But bristlecone pine needles can remain functional for 20, 30, even 40 years. Scientists have documented needles that were 35 years old and still photosynthesizing, still pulling carbon dioxide from the thin mountain air and using the energy of sunlight to build sugars, despite having endured decades of drought, freezing temperatures, and intense ultraviolet radiation at high elevation. This extraordinary longevity of the needles means that the tree does not need to invest much energy in replacement, allowing it to direct its limited resources toward the slow, incremental process of adding a microscopic layer of new wood each year. The wood itself is dense and resinous, saturated with compounds that make it virtually immune to rot and resistant to attack by insects and fungi. When a bristlecone pine finally dies, usually through the slow process of being toppled by erosion or wind after its roots have been undermined, the wood does not decay in any conventional sense. Instead, it erodes like stone, worn away grain by grain by the abrasive action of ice crystals and wind-driven sand. Dead bristlecone pines can remain standing for hundreds or even thousands of years, their forms growing ever more abstract and sculptural, until they begin to resemble contemporary art installations more than they resemble trees. Walk through a bristlecone grove and you will see these standing dead trees, their silvery wood polished smooth, their grain exposed in sinuous curves and spirals that seem almost too perfect to be natural. And scattered on the ground around them, you will find pieces of bristlecone wood that may have fallen centuries ago, still intact, still resistant to the processes of decay that would have reduced almost any other wood to dust. This resistance to decay is one of the keys to the bristlecone pine's remarkable longevity. Most trees die not from old age in any biological sense, but from the accumulation of damage. A branch breaks in a storm, creating an entry point for fungi. The fungi begin to decay the heartwood, weakening the tree's structure. Eventually, the tree either breaks or becomes so weakened that it can no longer transport water effectively, and it dies. But bristlecone pines have evolved to resist this process. Even when their bark is damaged, even when most of a tree appears dead, the dense, resinous wood does not provide a hospitable environment for the organisms that cause rot. The tree can continue to live on a surprisingly small amount of living tissue, sometimes just a narrow strip of bark connecting roots to crown, for centuries or even millennia, and the environment itself, harsh as it is, contributes to the bristlecone pine's longevity. That alkaline dolomite soil, with its high calcium and magnesium content and its low phosphorus, is nearly impossible for most plants to tolerate. But because other species cannot compete in these conditions, the bristlecone pines have the space to themselves. They grow in isolation, each tree separated from its neighbors by dozens of feet, sometimes by hundreds of feet. When lightning strikes and starts a fire, the flames cannot spread far because there is so little vegetation to burn. The spacing of the trees and the lack of ground cover means that fires remain small and localized. An individual tree might be scarred by fire, might lose some branches or have its bark damaged, but it will almost certainly survive. The cold itself is protective. At elevations above 10,000 feet, there are fewer insect pests and fewer disease-causing organisms. The growing season is too short and the temperatures too cold for many of the bark beetles and pathogens that plague trees at lower elevations. And the limited growing season, while it means that growth is extraordinarily slow, also means that the tree is not stressed by rapid growth. A 40-year-old bristlecone pine might not even reach 6 inches in height. The trunk of a large bristlecone might add less than 1/100th of an inch to its diameter in a year. This is growth measured in almost geological time, growth that requires patience beyond human understanding. But it is precisely this slow growth that produces wood of such density and durability that creates a tree capable of persisting through the millennia. The bristlecone pine's reproductive strategy also speaks to patience and persistence. These trees are monoecious, meaning each individual produces both male and female cones. The male cones produce pollen that is carried on the wind to fertilize the ovules in the female cones. But seed production is not abundant. The trees can produce seeds for thousands of years, but as they age, they produce fewer and fewer. And even the seeds that are produced face tremendous challenges. The harsh environment means that only a tiny fraction of seeds will germinate, and of those that do germinate, only a small percentage will survive to become established seedlings. But the trees do not need to produce vast numbers of offspring to maintain their population. They need only to replace themselves over their extraordinarily long lifespans, and even this limited reproduction is sufficient when each individual can live for thousands of years. There is something else remarkable about bristlecone pines that has made them invaluable to science. Because they grow so slowly, and because they are so sensitive to variations in moisture, each annual ring they produce is a record of that year's growing conditions. In wet years, the ring is slightly wider. In drought years, it is narrower. By carefully analyzing the patterns of these rings, scientists called dendrochronologists can reconstruct past climates with remarkable precision. And because bristlecone pines live for so long, and because their wood persists for so long after death, researchers have been able to construct a continuous tree ring chronology that extends back nearly 10,000 years. This chronology has been crucial for refining radiocarbon dating techniques and for understanding how climate has varied over the past several millennia. The bristlecone pines, simply by growing slowly and persistently in their mountain homes, have become living and dead archives of environmental history. But there is another species of ancient giant that captures our imagination in a different way, and to find these trees we need to travel west from the White Mountains, across the Owens Valley, and up into the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada. Here, in a narrow band roughly 60 miles long and at elevations between 4,600 and 7,050 feet, grow the giant sequoias, the most massive trees on Earth. Where the bristlecone pines are small and gnarled, sculpted by hardship into forms of abstract beauty, the giant sequoias are columns of unimaginable bulk, trees that seem to belong to a different scale of existence entirely. To stand at the base of a mature giant sequoia and look upward is to experience a shift in perception. Your mind struggles to process the dimensions. The trunk rises and rises, as thick at 100 feet as it is at the ground, maintaining its massive diameter for much of its height before finally tapering to a rounded, dome-shaped crown that can itself be more than 100 feet across. The bark is thick and deeply furrowed, colored in shades of cinnamon and rust and umber, and it has a fibrous, spongy texture that gives slightly when you press your hand against it. The General Sherman tree, located in the giant forest of Sequoia National Park, is recognized as the largest living tree on Earth by total volume. This single organism contains approximately 52,500 cubic feet of wood. To put that in perspective, if you could somehow turn all of that wood into lumber, you could build more than 100 average-sized houses from the wood of this one tree. The General Sherman stands approximately 275 feet tall, and its base has a circumference of more than 102 feet. Its largest branch, which broke off during a winter storm, had a diameter of nearly 7 feet and was more than 130 feet long, larger than most trees in their entirety. But the General Sherman, enormous as it is not particularly old by giant sequoia standards. Estimates place its age at between 2,300 and 2,700 years. It is a tree in its prime, still growing vigorously, still adding wood at a rate that far exceeds the growth of most other tree species. The oldest known giant sequoia, identified through the counting of rings on its stump after it was cut, was 3,266 years old. Think about that age in terms of human history. This tree was a seedling during the late Bronze Age, when the Mediterranean world was dominated by the Phoenicians and the Greeks were just beginning to emerge as a major civilization. It was already a large tree when the Roman Republic was founded, well established and massive when Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, ancient when the Inca Empire rose in South America, and still growing when the first Europeans arrived in California and looked up in wonder at these giants of the forest. Giant sequoias can live to be 3,000 years old, and many of the trees still standing today are between 2,000 and 3,000 years of age. They achieve this longevity through a combination of factors, some of them similar to the strategies employed by bristlecone pines, others unique to their own evolutionary path. The first and most obvious adaptation is size. When you are the largest tree on Earth, when your trunk is 30 feet in diameter and your bark is up to 2 feet thick, you become effectively immune to many of the threats that kill smaller trees. You cannot be toppled by normal winds. You are too large for most herbivores to damage significantly. And perhaps most importantly, you are remarkably resistant to fire. Fire is not an enemy to giant sequoias. It is, in fact, essential to their life cycle. These trees evolved in an environment where wildfires occurred naturally every 6 to 35 years on average. Fire scars found in the rings of giant sequoias going back 2,000 years show this pattern clearly. And the trees are exquisitely adapted to survive these fires. That thick bark, which can reach 18 inches or even 2 feet in thickness on the largest trees, is fibrous and non-resinous. It acts as an insulator, protecting the delicate cambium layer beneath. The thin sheet of cells just under the bark that produces new wood and new bark from the heat of flames passing by. Fire can char the outer bark, can even penetrate deep enough to create scars in the wood, but it very rarely kills a mature sequoia. The trees can survive being burned repeatedly over their long lives, accumulating fire scars that heal and become part of their history. The sequoia's relationship with fire goes even deeper. Their cones are serotinous, which means they remain closed and retain their seeds for years, or even decades until they are exposed to heat. When fire passes through a sequoia grove, the heat dries out the cones, causing them to open and release their seeds. The timing is perfect. The fire has cleared away competing vegetation and the thick duff layer on the forest floor. It has opened up the canopy, allowing more sunlight to reach the ground. It has created a bed of mineral-rich ash. And into this perfect seedbed, the sequoia cones release their tiny seeds, each one weighing only about 0.04 of a gram, smaller than a flake of oat cereal, by the hundreds of thousands. A large sequoia tree may have as many as 11,000 cones, and it can disperse 300,000 to 400,000 seeds annually. The winged seeds can travel as far as 600 feet from the parent tree on the wind, spreading across the newly cleared ground. Most of these seeds will not germinate. Of those that do germinate, most will not survive. Sequoia seedlings are fragile and require very specific conditions to establish themselves. They need full sunlight, abundant moisture, and mineral soil rather than thick duff. Fire creates all of these conditions. Without fire, the giant sequoia groves would eventually be replaced by other species, by the shade-tolerant white firs and incense cedars that can reproduce in the dim light beneath the sequoia canopy. But with regular fire, the sequoias persist, each generation rising from the ashes left by flames that their parents survived. The sequoias also benefit from their elevation of crown. As young trees, they grow in the classic conical shape, their branches extending all the way to the ground. But as they mature and reach sexual maturity, their form changes. The lower branches die and fall away, a process called self-pruning, until the living canopy is elevated 100 or even 150 feet above the ground. When fire comes, and fire will come eventually, it burns through the understory and consumes smaller trees, but the flames cannot reach up into the crown of a mature sequoia. The tree's living tissue remains safe above the flames, photosynthesizing peacefully while the forest floor burns below. And if a sequoia does suffer damage, if a fire penetrates the bark or if a branch is torn away by wind, the tree has remarkable capacity to heal and adapt. The cambium can produce new bark to seal over wounds. The tree can sprout new branches from its bole when lower branches are lost, something that few conifers can do once they have reached maturity. And perhaps most remarkably, the tree can simply persist with reduced vigor for a time. If damage is severe, if a large section of the cambium is killed, the tree may slow its growth, may reduce the size of its crown, but it does not necessarily die. It adjusts, it adapts, continues. The giant sequoias grow quickly in their early years. By the time a sequoia is 50 years old, it can be 100 feet tall and 8 feet in diameter, having added an average of 2 feet of height per year. This is rapid growth for such a long-lived tree, but it makes sense when you consider the sequoia's strategy. In the competitive environment of the Sierra Nevada forest, a young sequoia needs to grow fast to reach the canopy and establish itself above its competitors. Once it has achieved this height, once it has claimed its place in the sun, it can then focus on growing outward. And grow outward it does. For the rest of its life, which may span 2,000 or 3,000 years, the sequoia continues to add girth, to bulk up, to become ever more massive. The largest sequoias are like rocket ships in the midst of the forest, columns of wood that dwarf everything around them. This outward growth continues even in old age. In fact, some evidence suggests that the largest sequoias may actually grow faster as they age. adding more volume of wood per year than they did when they were younger. This seems counterintuitive. We tend to assume that growth slows with age in all organisms. But for the giant sequoias, their increasing size means increasing photosynthetic capacity. They have more needles, more branches, more surface area to capture sunlight, and they use that energy to add more wood. The general Sherman tree, enormous as it is, adds enough new wood each year, a shell of growth spread over its entire surface, to build a 5 or 6 room house every 40 years. It is growth at a scale that is difficult for us to comprehend, yet it happens so slowly, so incrementally, that you could sit and watch a sequoia for your entire life and never see visible change. The sequoia's strategy for longevity also involves accepting and working with damage rather than avoiding it entirely. If you examine the trunk of a large sequoia, you will almost certainly find fire scars, places where past fires have penetrated the bark and burned deep into the wood. You may see places where branches have been torn away, where large sections of bark are missing, but the tree persists. In fact, there is evidence that the sequoias have evolved to shed large branches deliberately. The largest branches are relatively weak compared to the massive trunk, and during extreme weather events, these branches will break and fall rather than threatening the integrity of the trunk itself. It is a strategy of sacrificing the part to save the whole, of accepting damage to survive the storm. The root systems of giant sequoias, interestingly, are not particularly deep. They are shallow and widespread, radiating out from the tree in all directions but rarely penetrating more than a few feet below the surface. This seems like it should be a weakness. How can a tree that stands 250 to 300 feet tall and weighs thousands of tons remain stable with shallow roots? The answer lies partly in the sheer spread of the root system. The roots of a large sequoia can extend out more than 100 feet from the trunk, and partly in the tree's adaptation to its environment. Giant sequoias grow in areas where soil moisture is available during the growing season, where the Sierra snowpack melts and keeps the soil moist through the summer. The shallow roots can access this moisture effectively. And in the relatively stable climate of their native range, with no hurricanes and infrequent severe windstorms, the shallow root system is generally adequate. But this does mean that the most common cause of death for mature giant sequoias is toppling. Eventually, after thousands of years, the combination of repeated fire damage, the weight of the enormous trunk, and the gradual weakening of the roots leads to instability. A particularly severe winter storm, with heavy snow load on the crown or strong winds, will push the tree past its tipping point. It will fall, and when a giant sequoia falls, it is an event of almost geological significance. The impact shakes the ground. The trunk, so dense and heavy, often shatters on impact, breaking into massive sections that can lie on the forest floor for centuries before they finally decay. And even in death, the tree continues to play a role in the ecosystem, providing habitat for countless organisms and slowly returning its vast store of nutrients to the soil. Now, you might wonder what these two very different trees, the small, gnarled bristlecone pine of the high mountains and the massive giant sequoia of the Sierra Nevada, can teach us. On the surface, they seem to inhabit opposite ends of a spectrum. One survives by growing as slowly as possible in the harshest conditions imaginable. The other thrives in a more benign environment by growing quickly and becoming so large that it is almost invulnerable. But when you look more closely, you begin to see common themes. strategies that both species employ to achieve their remarkable longevity. The first and perhaps most important lesson is patience. Both of these trees measure their lives in millennia, not years. They do not rush. They do not try to accomplish everything quickly. A bristlecone pine may take 50 to 100 years just to reach maturity, to be established enough that it has a reasonable chance of surviving to old age. A giant sequoia doesn't reach its full height until it is 500 to 750 years old. These are timescales that we humans, with our lifespans of decades, struggle to comprehend. We live in a world of quarterly earnings reports and 5-year plans, of instant gratification and immediate results. We want to see progress now, today, this month. But these trees remind us that some of the most significant achievements, the most lasting accomplishments, require patience that extends beyond our individual lives. Consider the bristlecone pine adding its microscopic layer of wood each year, so little growth that you could not measure it without precise instruments. Consider the sequoia slowly, incrementally building its massive trunk over the course of millennia. Neither tree hurries, neither tree rushes to achieve some goal. They simply persist year after year, century after century, adding their tiny increment of growth, weathering storms and droughts and fires, and somehow, through this patient accumulation of small changes, they become the oldest living things on Earth. There is also the lesson of adaptation to environment. Both of these trees thrive precisely because they have evolved to fit their specific circumstances so perfectly. The bristlecone pine does not wish it were growing in a more favorable location. It has adapted to its harsh environment so completely that it cannot even survive in gentler conditions. In cultivation, in gardens with rich soil and adequate water, bristlecone pines quickly succumb to root rot. They need the harsh conditions of the high mountains. The stress is not something they endure in spite of their longevity. It is a key component of their survival strategy. Similarly, the giant sequoias have evolved to need fire. Without the periodic clearing and renewal that fire brings, their seedlings cannot establish. They do not resist fire or avoid it. They have adapted to use it, to benefit from it, to make it an integral part of their life cycle. This speaks to a kind of wisdom that we often lack. The ability to recognize the conditions of your existence, to adapt to them rather than fight against them, and even to find ways to turn apparent challenges into opportunities. Both trees also demonstrate the value of persistence and resilience in the face of damage. The bristlecone pines survive with strips of living bark on mostly dead wood. The giant sequoias persist with fire scars that penetrate deep into their heartwood. Neither tree is pristine. Neither tree is untouched by the difficulties of its existence. But they continue. They adapt to injury. They compartmentalize damage. They keep growing, keep photosynthesizing, keep producing seeds, even when most of their mass is non-functional or damaged. There is something profound in this. We often think of health and strength as the absence of damage, as perfection maintained. But these ancient trees teach us that longevity comes not from avoiding all harm but from the ability to absorb damage, to heal what can be healed, to work around what cannot be healed, and to keep going. The concept of time itself takes on different meaning when you contemplate these trees. A bristlecone pine that has been alive for 5,000 years has experienced 5,000 changes of seasons, 5,000 cycles of growth and dormancy. It has felt the sun of 5,000 summers and the cold of 5,000 winters. It has been there in that specific place, growing in that specific patch of dolomite soil for longer than human civilization has existed in its current form. When we stand before such a tree, when we place our hand on bark that was already ancient when the pyramids were young, we are touching a form of immortality, or as close to it as the natural world offers. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson these ancient trees offer us. They remind us that we are part of something larger and older than ourselves, that the world existed long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone, that our individual lives are brief flickers in the context of deep time, but that we are connected to these longer rhythms and cycles. The bristlecone pine stands on its mountain. The giant sequoia rises in its grove. They do not worry about the brevity of individual human lives or the fleeting concerns of a single generation. They simply persist, and in their persistence, they offer us a window into a different way of being, a different relationship with time, a different understanding of what it means to endure. We have traveled together through deep time and across the natural world, from the flowing water that carved stone over millions of years to the patient trees that count their ages in millennia rather than decades. We have seen how the principles that govern the natural world, slowness, persistence, adaptation, interconnection, create systems of remarkable beauty and enduring strength. And now, as we draw near the end of this journey through the sleepy science of the natural world, it seems fitting to pause and consider what these patterns and processes might mean for us, for our lives, for our place in the larger living community of Earth. The bristlecone pines stand on their lonely mountains, shaped by wind and cold into forms of abstract beauty, alive in conditions that would kill almost any other tree. The giant sequoias rise like cathedral columns in their Sierra groves, massive and patient, their thick bark bearing the scars of centuries of fires that they have survived and even benefited from. The rivers flow ceaselessly, wearing away stone grain by grain, shaping landscapes through the patient accumulation of countless small changes. The seasons turn, each one bringing its necessary changes, its challenges, its opportunities for growth or rest. What connects all of these phenomena, what threads through every story we have explored, is time working in concert with persistent, gentle action. Nothing happens quickly in the natural processes that create lasting change. Canyons are not carved in a day. Ancient trees do not add their thousands of rings in a rush of growth. Mountains do not rise overnight, nor are they worn away in a single storm. Everything of significance, everything that endures, is built slowly, patiently, through the steady accumulation of small changes over vast spans of time. This runs counter to so much of how we live our modern lives. We are surrounded by messages that tell us to move faster, accomplish more, achieve greater things in shorter time frames. We are constantly bombarded with examples of overnight success, of rapid transformation, of dramatic change occurring in the blink of an eye. And while there is nothing wrong with speed and efficiency in their place, the natural world reminds us that the deepest changes, the most lasting transformations, the strongest structures and systems are almost always built slowly. Think about what this means for personal growth and development. We often want to change ourselves quickly, to transform our lives dramatically, to become different people almost instantaneously. We make sweeping resolutions, we commit to radical changes, and then we wonder why these dramatic shifts do not last, why we find ourselves falling back into old patterns. But the bristlecone pine adding its microscopic ring of wood each year, the river wearing away stone grain by grain, these suggest a different approach. What if lasting change comes not from dramatic leaps but from the patient accumulation of tiny improvements? What if becoming who we wish to be is less like a sudden transformation and more like the slow growth of an ancient tree? Consider also the lesson of adaptation and working with circumstances rather than against them. The bristlecone pines thrive in harsh conditions precisely because they have evolved to fit those conditions perfectly. They do not waste energy wishing they were growing somewhere else. They do not struggle against the reality of alkaline soil and brutal winters. They have adapted so completely to their environment that they cannot even survive in gentler circumstances. This is not resignation or passive acceptance. This is the profound wisdom of understanding what you are working with and finding ways to turn apparent disadvantages into strengths. For us, this might mean examining our own circumstances, our talents, our limitations, our environment, our challenges, and asking not, how can I fight against these? But rather, how can I adapt to these? How can I work with what I have? How might the very difficulties I face be opportunities for a different kind of growth? The giant sequoias do not resist fire. They have evolved to need it, to use it, to benefit from it. Perhaps there are aspects of our own lives that we view as obstacles or threats, but that might, with a shift in perspective and strategy, become integral to our growth. The interconnection we see throughout nature also offers important insights. The trees in a forest are not isolated individuals competing solely for resources. They are connected through their root systems, through the fungi that link them beneath the soil, through their mutual dependence on the ecosystem services that the forest provides. The health of one tree is related to the health of the grove. Similarly, we do not exist in isolation. Our well-being is tied to the well-being of our communities, our families, our larger social and ecological systems. The actions we take ripple outward, affecting others in ways we may never fully know. And the health of the systems we are part of comes back to affect us. This interconnection is not just a poetic metaphor. It is a practical reality with real implications for how we live. Persistence in the face of damage is another theme that runs through these stories of natural systems. The ancient trees survive with fire scars and broken branches. They persist with reduced canopies when necessary. They adapt to injury rather than being defeated by it. This is not about being invulnerable or avoiding all harm. This is about resilience, about the capacity to absorb damage, to heal what can be healed, to work around what cannot be healed, and to continue growing despite imperfection. For us as individuals, this suggests that strength is not the same as perfection, that a meaningful life is not one without scars or setbacks, but one in which we learn to persist through difficulty, to adapt when we must, and to keep growing even when growth is slow or painful. The natural world, in all its forms and processes, operates on principles of gentle persistence rather than force. Water does not break stone through strength or violence. It wears it away drop by drop, year after year, century after century. The tree does not force its way upward. It simply grows incrementally, adding tiny amounts of new tissue each day throughout the growing season. This principle of gentle, persistent effort creating profound change over time is perhaps one of the most valuable insights we can draw from our exploration of the sleepy science of nature. As you lie in the dark, perhaps drifting toward sleep, perhaps simply resting in this quiet space we have created together, consider carrying some of these insights with you into your waking life. Consider the patience of the ancient trees, the persistence of flowing water, the gentle but inexorable power of natural processes working over time. Consider how you might apply these principles to your own growth, your own goals, your own life. What would it mean to approach change with the patience of a bristlecone pine? What would it look like to persist with the gentle but steady force of a river? How might your life be different if you could embrace the timescales of nature, measuring progress not in days or weeks but in seasons and years? The natural world does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. The ancient trees do not rush, yet they outlive civilizations. The rivers do not force, yet they carve canyons. There is wisdom here, deep and old, waiting for us when we slow down enough to notice it, when we quiet ourselves enough to hear it, when we open ourselves enough to learn from it. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the slow, patient processes that shape our world. If you found value in this exploration, if these ideas resonated with you, if you appreciate the gentle approach to science and wonder that we have shared here, please consider subscribing to the Deep Science Sleep channel and giving this video a like. Your support helps us continue creating these explorations of the natural world, these quiet journeys through the science that shapes our planet and our lives. And perhaps, as you go about your days, you will find yourself noticing the patient work of nature around you. The tree growing slowly in your neighborhood, the way water shapes the landscape after rain, the subtle changes of the seasons, and you will feel connected to these deep, old rhythms that have been unfolding since long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. Sleep well, rest peacefully, and may you carry with you the patient wisdom of ancient trees and flowing water.